let's introduce what we want to do here today.
All right. Welcome everyone who is watching and to all the future viewers who are watching this sometime in the future. My name is David Hurdle and talking with Sal Crispo today, founder of V10 Health. And what we're going to be talking about is authentic soul expression. And so imagine the most loving, compassionate part of yourself, the most abundant, the most interconnected, the most wise, like the highest version of yourself that you can imagine. Like this is the soul. And we want to connect with that and use that to help guide us through our life and our choices that we make. But there's a lot of things that interfere with that. So everyone has access to their soul at any moment, but there's a lot of barriers to that. And we're going to go over some of those barriers today, and we're going to go over, how to connect with your soul, because it just may not be something that most people actually have as a regular practice. We want to make sure that people, have that strong bridge and that strong feeling and that strong knowingness of what it feels like to be connected with your soul and driven and living your life from that, because it's the best version of yourself that you can be. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So authentic soul expression. I think a lot of people, not a lot of people, almost everybody, we live a life we start off living our life in a life that's handed to us and programmed for us. And there's society conditioning, and society says you should live this life and this is what you should do, and you should have a job and you should save and you should get a mortgage and you should retire. And there's all these different ways that society imprints onto us how we should be living life. But unfortunately, not all of those ways are in alignment with who we are or what our life path is. And so when we can connect with our soul, when we can connect with our heart, we have our inner compass and our way that helps us navigate through life in a way that is most fulfilling for us. So Sal Crispo has been founder of V10 Health. I've known Sal for 12 or 13 years now, and we see very eye to eye on a lot of things, very similar philosophies, and we both look at a holistic approach to life. We look at exercise, we look at nutrition, we look at mind, we look at spirit, we look at everything for that purpose of living that soul-driven life. And so, let's get started. So authentic soul expression. Sal, is there anything you'd like to add there?
No, it was a great intro, Dave. It was, it's a perfect start to what I believe is going to be, quite impactful presentation. If anybody has any questions at any time and you're watching live, then feel free to type a comment or a question, and we'll answer it immediately, or if not at the end, if it makes more sense to answer at the end. So the our learning agenda for today basically is defining what authentic soul expression is. Dave already outlined quite a bit there in that amazing intro, but we'll go into more detail on that. How to build awareness and differentiate between the ego and the soul. What Dave was saying in the intro, the societal pressures and the programming basically is what makes up the ego, and much more. The importance of establishing a hierarchy of self, which breaks down body, mind, and spirit, and the role they play and how to integrate them in an optimal way so that you can perform at a high level and get the most out of your life. And then how to eliminate blockages and connect to the soul. We definitely have, challenges that, we need to overcome in order to, be soul driven and live the, in this manner that, again, that Dave touched upon. So what is authentic soul expression and why is it important? Defining authentic soul expression. Authentic soul expression, or A.S.E, is the ability to freely express your true physical, mental, and spiritual self without reservation or restriction. So, Dave, this is important because a lot of times when people, talk about spirituality or the soul, they can get, I guess, too narrow focused and not really include the physical and the mental, because those are very important to leading a spiritual life. You cannot just focus on spirituality and sacrifice the mental and physical self, right? That'd be akin to someone, praying and going to church every day, but being completely inactive, eating poorly, and, not challenging their mind, through reading or, mindfulness practices or whatever the case may be. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're getting into some sort of esoteric concepts here, especially when it comes to the soul. You are your soul, and your soul is you, but we're not necessarily connected with the maybe higher or more wise or more loving, compassionate aspects of that. But because you are your soul and your soul is you, that includes your mind and your body.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I think some people definitely just focus on spirit, or maybe even think that their soul is something separate from them. So when I say like connecting with your soul, it's sort of connecting with greater aspects of yourself or more loving aspects of yourself, and just going deeper within and within. Because for me, the journey to that connection has been primarily an internal journey, which we'll talk about, I guess, a little bit later. But going back to the physical part, your physical body, I guess, as a way to look at it, and again, well, I guess we'll talk about this later, is just you can think of it as the vehicle for your soul. And your body really needs to be healthy to be able to access those more higher loving, compassionate states and have, higher states of consciousness and have that connection. So if your body is strong and healthy and vibrant and you have lots of vitality, that is one of the, big important factors in terms of keeping that connection to your soul self alive and strong, right? So yeah, I think definitely people, they look at the soul and they get into, meditation or spirituality, and then they just kind of let the body go by the wayside. But from both of our perspectives, it's all of it. You have to look.
Yes.
You have to look.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, you have to look at all of it, and if you're lacking in one, that probably then is an indicator that there's some either program in your mind or something you're not aware of, or some level of lack of self-awareness or self-love that is actually blocking you from having that stronger connection.
Yes. And what you just said is perfectly represented in this image, right, of the person doing yoga here, because, they're physically challenging themselves with this stance, for instance, and there's balance, and then there's, awareness of breath and being. You're challenging your mind here because you're focusing on, the breathing and the stance and the balance, and not thinking about what's next in life, or just being bombarded by stressful type thinking. And and it's also spiritual because you're practicing just being, and that's what the soul is. It is your being. So I just thought that this image really represented, um, all three of these integrated and working well together in a positive way, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Um, all right. So, what's the problem with being soul driven, right? What's the problem with being ego driven instead of
Yeah,
soul driven? Um, and yeah, when you sort of, um, are, a baby, you come into this world a clean slate, and society, the environment around you is, educating you. Now, that may not be uh, something that, a lot of it is a good thing, but there's a lot of parts that may actually be counterproductive because it doesn't resonate with your soul. So if you never really learn to listen to your soul and, learn to filter out, what does resonate with what doesn't, then you can get caught up in, you know, living a life that, society wants you to lead versus a life that, that you yourself, your soul wants to lead.
right.
And this can happen in two ways. Like here we have selling one's soul is more common than you think. Some people do it consciously. They know what their soul wants. They know they don't like a certain thing, and yet they still follow this path, which just going to lead to darkness and suffering. Because when you go against what your soul wants, it's not going to be happy, right? It's gonna be talking to you. It's just going to be saying, hey, you love to sing, and yet you're not singing, or you love to whatever, help people, and yet you're only doing things that are self-centered and selfish. But I think, even though a lot of people do sell their soul, there are a lot of people who don't know. They just sort of uh, are not even aware that they have this soul that is unique. That because all of our souls are unique. It's almost like our thumbprint, right? Where some people may love singing, and other people would love dancing. Other people love creating art. Other people, whatever. It could be, playing sports. So their soul wants to express itself differently. And if you never really learn how to go within, tune in, and find that, then you don't even know that you're selling your soul. So there's two things. Again, I'll repeat it: is the conscious selling of the soul, where you do know that it's what you want, but you're like, no, I'd rather take the money, because that job pays more, even though I would love to do this job, but it doesn't pay as much.
Right.
Or then there's some people who just, again, they don't realize that there is something within themselves that can guide them and direct them into something that's going to give them fulfillment and joy, versus just randomly choosing something because it's the opportunity that comes up, and it's they just sort of settle, if you will.
Yeah, yeah,
Does this make sense?
yeah. I think,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, with living in darkness, it's like if when you connect with your soul and you trust that it wants the most for you and the best for you, and um, will lead you to lighter places or higher places and more fulfillment. You're talking, so we're talking sort of about the journey from um, separation into unity
Mhm.
as a broad theme. And the more you come into unity and the more loving and compassionate you can become as a human being, and the more connected to your soul, the more you shift into higher vibrational states of being, where your set point is now higher. And then you continue on that path, and your set point of happiness and joy is now higher. And it sort of goes up. But when you're not listening, and so that's sort of the journey more into unity and wholeness. But then when you're not listening, the journey in the living in the darkness is just going deeper into states of fear and separation and isolation. And that's kind of the way I look at it. You get more isolated, you are connected less with yourself, and you're connected less with other people. And what arises from that, or what I always see, is just that cycle of duality in that unconscious living. And I think a good example of this we see is just politics, right? It's probably the most classic, easiest to identify um, cycle of duality that people can look at. And I know a lot of people really get swept up in politics, but if you really look at it, you see one side that doesn't want to take any responsibility for itself and blames the other side, and then you see the other side doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they just mirror each other's behavior back and forth to each other, and it actually causes a state of polarization where over time both sides get farther and farther and farther and farther away from each other. And you can see this is what's happening now in politics. It's, in most places, but especially in the US, is that now you no longer see the other person as a human being. You only see them for a specific identity label that you give them. You give
Mm-hmm.
them conservative label, you give them Democrat, and then there's a whole entire story that's attached to that label.
Mm-hmm.
And now your perception is flawed because you see a person as only that.
Yes.
And you don't see the rest of the person, and you start reacting to those people from those preconceived notions and definitions and ideas in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And what this ends up being is just a dive deeper into the not a dive deeper, but you just become more and more unconscious and reactionary in your behavior. You're not really perceiving things truly as they are. And that polarization, and as it increases, you increase the risk for violence and conflict. And that is inevitably what happens when you are not listening to your soul. Now, it doesn't happen right away. It's a slow buildup over time, but that polarization that creates more separation and more division between people gets, what we call the cycle of duality, where you just keep repeating the same stupid behaviors. No, that's a little judgmental. Maybe
Yeah.
unconscious behaviors is a better term, but you just can keep repeating those over and over again. And you just get stuck in your growth and your evolution. And it's not actually a very fulfilling life. It's just a very reactionary life. And you're just on autopilot most of the time. So, and living in darkness could be more fear, but it could also just be your unconscious. Like you're just not connected. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. And I'm just gonna write a comment there.
Someone have a question?
Yeah. More more has joined us. So thank you very much for the comment.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is there anything more you want to say about that?
No, I think you summed it up quite well. I sort of envision just one more thing, I guess. I sort of envision this fire that you can say is, your soul or the source within, right? And when you're connected to that, your life is bright, and everything in your life is just more meaningful, fulfilling, and so forth. And anytime you walk away from that, the further you get from the further you deviate from what your soul wants, the darker life becomes, the colder you become. If you move away from that fire, right? Because your soul has these desires that this innate desire to express its authentic self. And the more you deviate from that, you're just going to go colder and colder, and frostbite starts to set in, and it becomes painful, right? It's the suffering, because you're listening to your ego, which is saying, come over here, right? Shiny ball syndrome. Come down here. This is what society's saying is going to be great, right? Whether it be something materialistic, right? The fancy car, or house or a certain type of family or career or whatever it is in the external world.
Yeah.
And it's sort of that this allure, and it's hard for people to escape that, because they think the only way they can fill this inner void. This is what I went through when I was depressed. I was always looking to fill that inner void and that pain that I was feeling with stuff in the external world. And finally, I realized that no matter what I gained, I always felt this void and emptiness and pain. And finally, I was like, okay, I realize what I have to do. I have to go within and realign with my soul purpose. And when I did that, that's when I healed, and life just became much more amazing. I didn't gain anything. I still had everything was the same job, same people around me, everything. But life became more enlightened because of me just being um, congruent with what my sole purpose was, right? So
Yeah.
it's such a big thing that people need to realize. And um, and this is again very common.
Yeah.
Most people that I've coached like really struggle with this. They don't even want to talk about it. They would rather just tell me what exercise I need to do, right? Like they'd
Yeah.
rather talk about something else. Like I find this right here is the major weakness when I talk to or coach most people. And it's usually like the last stuff that I get into, because I need to gain a lot of trust
Yeah.
with them through the exercise and through the diet, because then they're like, oh yeah, he actually really knows what he's talking about. Look, I'm losing weight and I'm feeling better, and oh, maybe this guy actually does know what he's talking about, and he could help me with this whole soul stuff or whatnot. But it takes time, right? It takes
Yeah.
time because it's very, very personal.
It
And
is.
and most people will like to keep it under the carpet, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
yeah, I liked what you said there about the shiny ball syndrome, because the thing is, it's if you're not connected within, you're looking without for any sense of happiness or pleasure. However, whatever is happening
mhm.
external is transient
Yes.
and always changes and is
Hmm.
never the same. And so you keep attaching your happiness and state of being to things that you have no control over, and that will kind of just jerk you around or come and leave. So that lasting fulfillment and that lasting connection is definitely something that you find within and that you've got to keep
Hmm.
with you, and that's where you go to feel that, and then that keeps you going through all of the changes and all of the turmoil and all of the stuff that's going on in the external world. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because the external world is out of your control. It's always changing. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be storms. There's going to be times where it's great. But if you're dependent on if your happiness and your emotional stability is dependent on chaos,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
you're in for a rough ride.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a question
Oh,
from
sorry.
Amor. Can a soul's purpose change over time, or does it stay the same for the duration of one's lifetime? It's a very good question.
Okay.
Do you want to go there first, and then I'll comment after?
Sure. You want me to go first?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I believe the soul is growing. So if uh, you know, so just like anything else, right? You got to listen to your heart, right? You may do something for a while and you love it, but then you're done, right? And then your soul goes, okay, what's next? So there's no problem with changing course, right? Because you've experienced it and you felt fulfilled, and now there's a time where you're no longer fulfilled with that certain thing, and you're just like, okay, what's next? I mean, this is about exploration, right? If you go to a country and you travel, for instance, and you love that country, it doesn't mean you don't want to explore any other places in the world. So yeah, we that's just our nature. I think uh, that's part of why we're here, is to evolve. um, and as we evolve, we're going to want to tackle new, different challenges. That's just going to help us, to keep again growing and evolving. Dave?
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe for some people, if it might stay the same, but I know for myself, and which is mostly all I can speak of, yeah, it definitely has changed, and things that you enjoy and how you enjoy them change, and as you grow and evolve. So what the way I see it as in terms of if you're looking at maybe like an overall arching soul purpose is unity with all that is. That's like the big purpose is to have that self-realization that you are more than just your body, right? You and I have both have had our spiritual awakening experiences where we
Hmm.
experienced ourselves as more than just a physical body. That's maybe the overall arching purpose, I guess, is just that type of experience of unity consciousness. But the path to get there is never just one thing, right? It always changes, it always bends, it always flows, and your soul is going to guide you. If let's say that's the end goal or end result, your the way I see it is your soul is just going to guide you through certain experiences that are going to get you there. And that doesn't always mean having the same purpose for your entire life. That can definitely mean that it changes. And I mean, some people, I think part of it is just on your nature. Some people are more very yin in their personality, and some people are very more yang. And so what that means is some people are very more ambitious and focused and driven, and they just go a straight line, and other people are very more sort of just go with the flow and just connect with that and see where it takes you. So you kind of have to know your nature to see if you're connecting with that. But yeah, I think it changes for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
I'm not sure that a soul's purpose has specifically to do with anything like career or making money. Like I said, it's more about
It's yeah, it's
bringing you
more.
to that end result of communion with all that is, and so
Mhm.
whatever experiences it needs to guide you through to get you to that is what it is, and that is going to be changing definitely.
Yeah, I would say it's more, yeah, like service oriented, right? And it could be like creating wonderful art that makes people uh, feel great, right, about themselves. And
Yeah.
I can really appreciate art, just like you can appreciate, the universe's art, like different places on this planet, or other planets or solar systems, and so forth. So yeah, I agree a lot with what you said there, Dave. That was really good. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Were there any other questions,
No,
or
that's it. Yeah, let's
okay?
move forward. Yeah.
So yeah, benefits of authentic soul expression. Um, this is what you have to look forward to if you do decide to connect with your soul and lead with that part of your being. Um, Dave said this in one of our talks, actually in our previous podcast on depression, which I really loved. And it's yeah, living inside out versus outside in, and that again, this is what we're talking about. That just pretty much nails it on the head, right? You're going within yourself and discovering what it is that you truly want, right? Not the programming. This is beyond the programming, not the outside in stuff. Remember, the programming is what you got from the outside that came in. So, part of this battle is distinguishing between those two, and we're going to talk about how to do that. We realize our infinite potential. Yeah, once you tune into the soul, the soul has just great strength, right? It's part of our divinity. It's connects us to God, and you think God uh, thinks it doesn't have infinite potential, like it created everything that we see. So when you really do, tune into that, you just become immensely empowered, and then become masters of our destiny. When you're soul driven, you just know, like, because you're in control of yourself, it doesn't mean you could control the things around you, but you control how you respond to the things around you. There may be storms, but you can still steer the ship in the direction you want to go, right? When you're, leading more of a victim mindset and being dictated by, again, the outside in, you're sort of like let go of this of the helm, if you will, and wherever the storm takes you, you sort of go. You just, it's like random, right? It's based on luck. It's like, oh, I ended up in a good spot. That's amazing. Or no, I didn't. Look at me, poor me. And when you become master of your destiny, you know what your soul wants, and you're guiding your whole being, which is made up again of body, mind, and spirit, toward that direction. And even if there, are storms that may knock you off course slightly, you take, you're still holding onto the wheel, and you're just, you know, fighting the waves, and you eventually going to end up there because, you set your sails and you adjust everything to get back there. So you're somewhat at least in control there. And then create work with abundant energy. When you're aligned with your soul purpose, work doesn't feel like work, right? Like right now, I'm having a great time presenting this. I love this. I love helping people. I love helping people become more, soul driven. It's a real passion of mine. I love making people more fit. I love people making people more conscious, whatever it is, like just evolving up the V10 scale on body, mind, and spirit. That's my passion. I honestly don't think like it's work at all. I have abundant energy for it, and then positively contribute to society. Right, like Dave was saying before, your soul has some. Uh, what it is, regardless of how you do it, the soul wants to serve other people. It's not just self-serving like the ego, right? There's some type of service that you feel really, really good to, and you contribute to society in a certain way, whether again it be through creating wonderful works of art or pieces of music, or um, educating others, whatever it is. Anything you want to add to benefits, Dave?
Yeah, so two things. One is I just think the more conscious a person becomes and the greater connection they have with their spirit, the more free will they have to exercise. And so when I talked earlier about the polarization, especially in the politics, and going deeper into unconscious or becoming more unconscious, like because those choices within that political realm are so reactionary, you actually don't have a choice anymore. You can't choose to do anything other than what your unconscious reaction dictates for you in that situation. And it's not just applying to politics, but a lot of the rest of your life, right? So the more connected with your soul you are, I think the greater accessibility you have to use your free will to make choices other than the ones that you already make as reactions or autopilot or unconscious programming.
Mm-hmm.
So that one, and the other one is just energy. Is like if you kind of look at, I mean, you've got the abundant energy there. I'll just sort of tap onto that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like if life, I guess what's the analogy or the metaphor? If life is a river and it's just letting, if you just let the river go and you're in the boat and all you have to do is steer a little bit and let the river guide you to where you want to go, it doesn't take a lot of energy. But as soon as you turn around and say, no, I want that, and you're trying to paddle upstream, right? It's a lot of energy you have to spend towards things that may actually not be very fulfilling,
Mm-hmm.
if it's a society based imprint that you're running off of. And so that type of uh, access to energy allows you to just be more healthier and happier, but just put out into society a little bit more. But just I think so many people are just so tired and run down
Mm-hmm.
in this day and age. Their bodies are not healthy. They have to. I mean, the ever present need to make money and keep up with the pace of an increased cost of living and is always pushing people, against testing, against how strong they can keep that connection with their soul, and doing stuff like that over the long run can really,
Mhm.
really take its toll on your energy and just drain you so much.
Mhm.
And so much of just having a healthy, happy life is dependent on your vitality and how much energy you have. So yeah,
Mhm.
for me, it's definitely the increase in energy has been huge, since I've sort of shifted more towards that. I don't waste a lot of energy on things that are not important to me anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can, create, uh, money with, like the thing that you love. That's what people forget. It's just not what drives you. That's what, I don't want, want people to understand what Dave is saying. 'Cause some people think like, oh, money is evil and then all these things. It's like, no, it only becomes evil when it's the priority over everything else. Again, that's selling your soul, right? So it's okay, like money's great, right? You can buy the more expensive organic food. You can whatever, hire a personal trainer. There's different things you can use money with that are very, very positive. um, so yeah, I just want to reiterate that. And yeah, definitely it's going to be more stressful going against the flow, right? So if you're going to go against the flow of what the soul wants, it's just going to create burnout and stress. So I like that, Dave. I really do.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. So next part, so how to integrate authentic soul expression. So some practical steps. Step one, build awareness, awareness of soul and ego. So yeah, know thyself. Learn to go within yourself and differentiate between what your ego says and wants from what your soul says and wants. Right. So as you can see, the little image there is of a person with arrows pointing inward, meaning a lot of people try to find themselves through external means. Like in the world, they're going around and looking for themselves and trying to find happiness with that shiny ball syndrome, where they're trying to find that perfect uh, whatever paying job, or uh, it could be a woman or man, or whatever it is that they're looking for, and just keep running around in circles and never truly finding happiness, because they don't know what their true self wants, right? So this is an old, I believe it was Socrates saying, right? Know thyself. And it's extremely important. And it's also important to know, like, when you get this inner voice that says, you must have that. How do you know it's not shiny ball syndrome, or your soul actually saying, hey, we really like that. We want you to, go after it, or, that's the direction we want you to go in, right? So that's key, right? And I find that, I guess, the most difficult part to teach people, this difference. Would you agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, the underlying reason, for sure, because especially, I mean, it takes, I guess we're talking a little bit more about nuance here,
Mhm.
that people have to have that higher level of self awareness in terms of what is the difference between instant gratification and joy, um, right? Uh, I tend to look at it as the journey is the destination.
Yes.
And if you are, if you want to climb Mount Everest and you're frustrated and angry the entire way, uh, and you don't like it and you don't like climbing mountains, but you just get to the top for that one moment, you have that big release and the ego is like, woohoo, look what I achieved. But you spend all of that time doing something that you didn't enjoy just for something that's going to last a moment or two.
Hmm.
So as I think, as long as you are enjoying the steps along the way and the result, you don't have to, right? I don't say you don't enjoy the result. You certainly do,
Hmm.
but you have to enjoy the steps along the way. And that's kind of what I think you talked about earlier, is work doesn't feel like work.
Yes.
Like when we first started doing these, after I did them, I like I went in, and during my meditations, I was like, okay, how did that feel? Like, did
Hmm.
that feel like work? I'm like, it did not feel like work. It was just like conversation, and it was effortless, but it's still, still something that we can put out to help people. So it's, for me,
Hmm.
that's how I kind of look at it as I look at the journey, um, versus the end result, and knowing the difference between instant gratification, what only brings you pleasure now, and the instant moment. If you take that and magnify it, like if I have a can of Coke, that's instant gratification. And if I magnify it to, if I have 20 or 30 or 40 Cokes over a week for a lifetime, I know the consequences. I can see that by magnifying what happens in my own mind because I know it's bad for me.
Hmm.
And your soul would never lead you to something that is going to be that harmful in the long run.
Hmm.
So magnifying the consequence over time. That doesn't mean the journey is always going to be 100% easy, because it will put your soul will put you in situations where you're going to grow and expand. But again, that goes back to number one, and knowing thyself and having the awareness of what that feels like. And for me, it's always been a blend of excitement and nervousness.
Hmm.
Like when I would do this, when I was setting up, I was getting excited, but I was
Hmm.
also a little bit nervous. And so for me, I know that's in the right spot. Uh,
Yeah.
if I get too much into dread and fear, then I'm probably just trying to, my ego's probably just trying to push me to overcome something that I don't really have to. So
Yes.
yeah, so that's kind of how I look at it.
Yes.
The ego is always going to be actions for the benefit of self, for the benefit of self at the
Hmm.
expense of others.
Hmm.
And so if your actions are there and you are unaware of, or not even caring about the consequences of what you're doing, or what's the effects of your actions on people around you, I think that's a clear sign that your ego's running the show. And then I think your ego's running the show when you get very stuck in rigid thinking and concepts of right and wrong. Now, there are definitely right things that are right and wrong. You never want to hurt anyone, but there's
Hmm.
a lot of concepts of right and wrong which are just imprints that are based on fear. Like,
Hmm.
we're told people from other cultures are evil or whatever, and they're the enemy. Like, and from a religious perspective, they would see that as right and wrong and good and evil, but I would
Hmm.
just see it as ignorance.
Hmm.
So if you're so stuck on concepts that are right and wrong in the rigid thinking on your journey, and it has to be a specific way, because the soul is going to take you off course and never never in a direct line, right? It's never going to be linear. So you
Hmm.
have to have that open mind and flexibility to be able to embrace change and new challenges and new things. So yeah, that's kind of how I look at it, for sure.
Yeah. Great. One thing, yeah, I agree with everything you said there. There's another thing that I find with the ego versus the soul in terms of the wants or the desires. With the ego, I find the emotions because they both trigger emotions, and the ego triggers more explosive type of emotions. Like,
Yeah,
I have to have this yesterday. There's no patience. There's no like, and if you don't get it, you feel terrible, right? You feel empty, and it's like that's how you know it's an ego driven thing. Whereas
yeah,
the soul, like you said, it's like, ooh, this is going to be a great journey. I'm going to enjoy just getting there, right? So it's more subtle. It's definitely softer, right? Even though it's passionate about it, it's
yeah,
not explosive, right?
yeah,
uh, and you could see that with so many things. Like, the Eagles, like, I just have to have that because without it, like, I'm not going to feel good, right?
yeah.
And
It's
yeah,
the
where
one.
yes, whereas the soul, yeah, the journey itself is enriching, and the results are just sort of like the cherry on top. So
Yeah.
yeah, great way to put it.
Yeah, let's just maybe expand on identity a bit under ego characteristics, because
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's
Well.
something that it's a really important concept to understand,
Hmm.
but maybe it's not something that's sort of widely known or even just accepted. Uh,
Hmm.
is
Okay.
that I mean, we all have a sense of self that is who we think we are.
Mm-hmm.
If someone were to ask me who I am,
Mm-hmm.
I might say I'm a personal trainer. I might
Mm-hmm.
say my name is Dave. I might say I'm Canadian. But and that's pretty common answers that you'll get when you ask someone who they are. They'll name their profession. They'll just say their name. They might name say their nationality. Then you say who are
Yeah.
you? They might say I'm American or I'm Canadian or whatever. But all of
Mm-hmm.
these are actually not who you are. Those are just roles.
Labels.
The
Yeah.
roles that you play throughout
Mm-hmm.
life. And what happens is the ego gets really, really attached to that for a
Yeah.
sense of self, for any sense of self identity. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because you still have to kind of have a, yeah, I mean, you have to have some sort of identity to be able to navigate and integrate and live life. But it becomes the unhealthy attachment to that identity. And I think when the soul comes knocking on your door, you have to look for the ego's defenses arising that prevent you from changing who you think you are. I think that's a big barrier for a lot of people is identity. They get stuck in a sense of self and who they think they are, and that just all the actions that happen and the person takes tend to reinforce that sense of self,
Mm-hmm.
and actually don't let any growth happen. And so, yeah, that identity, when the ego gets in a way, you're stuck in a certain way of thinking who you are and you can't change from that. And I think that's a big barrier for a lot of people.
Yeah. There's a quote. I forgot who said it, but it says, "Who you are is always changing. What you are is always the same or remains the same."
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, it's something that, like, even if I've never met you, Dave, I don't know Dave, I don't know who you are, but I know what you are. You're a soul that came into this world, and we're connected through, the spiritual realm and all that thing. And it's a totally different um, kingdom, right? Like we have here in the soul characteristics. We know we're all brothers and sisters. A lot of the religious leaders said it, like Jesus, right? We're all brothers and sisters. We're all equal. We're all, children of God or children of the universe. It's just a label, God, right? But um, Dave and I are not too religious. We're more spiritual. But these are just sayings that uh, I guess most people have heard. So we're utilizing them. But you can use whatever makes you feel comfortable. Great Spirit, I like that one. But yeah, so yeah, very very important to know that who you are is, yeah, definitely always changing. Your age, right? Your name, you could change your name if you want legally, right? You
yeah,
can, yeah, all those things you can, definitely change. But what you are will be with you from the day you're born until the end, and beyond that too, because you came from somewhere and you're going to go somewhere, and that's your true self. That's what you're trying to connect to. So it's definitely beyond the programming and the identity. And just knowing the difference between the two, again, is what we're trying to say. What uh, that's going to empower you, because once you know uh, what you are, then it's up to you to create the identity that you want, because identity is still important. We're not saying it's not important, but it's the soul which should create the identity, not the external realm or society that should create your identity, because then that's when things become chaotic and you could find yourself in darkness, like we said before. And one more thing before we move on from this slide, going back to the know thyself, learn to go within yourself. That's a practice that you got to do on a daily basis, right? It's something that you can use things like meditation, but it's beyond that, right, Dave? You got to start to listen to your emotions, and feelings from your body, what your body expresses, your mind, and your soul. And I think that's really really important, because by doing that, then again, you know which we're going to get into it later, but you know which ones to listen to, and you know which ones, like, or how to handle each one depending
Yeah.
on the source.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, cool. All right, so let's move on. Are you good for this one?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Step two: establish a hierarchy. Um, yeah, so I sort of came up with this concept in my second book, which I haven't released yet, on how I overcame my depression. Um, and it's really, how to integrate and balance your body, mind, and spirit. I think of the threes, body, mind, and soul, as a three-player team, and God or divinity or great spirit, whatever you want to call it, as the coach. Now, yeah, it's up to you on, you're forced to have a body and mind, obviously, and then if you want your soul to participate and you want to be soul driven, then you got to know what the role of the soul is. And what we were talking about is, making the soul the captain. For most people, when they're ego driven, the mind is the captain, and it's literally steering the ship, right? So you don't want to get into that, because, as I've said before in our podcast, is the mind is lost and blind, and it has some faulty programming in it. And even though it can um, calculate really well, like it has some strong abilities to get what it wants, it doesn't mean that that's what's best for you as a person. So the mind is best utilized when the captain is directing it toward a certain aim, right? So that's where you need to reorganize your team. If your star player, ego gets too big and it gets out of hand, then what ends up happening is starts misleading you down different paths, because again, it thinks that's what's best for you, even though it doesn't really have any wisdom whatsoever. Whereas the soul, because it's direct connection to the source, has wisdom in abundance. It's the only one that could really has a direct line of communication with the coach. That's if you want and you utilize that. Then your life is going to be completely different, right? So who's your master? Is it your mind? Who's your captain? Are you making your captain your mind, or is it the soul, right? And that's really your choice. That's what we're talking about here. But one is going to lead you into darkness. The other one is going to lead you into enlightenment.
Yeah.
Dave, is there anything you want to add to this?
Yeah. I mean, if you just look at the analogy on a sports team, that
Yeah,
when a star player who is not the captain or the coach gets out of line and makes it all about them, look what happens to the entire team. Like,
yes, yes,
that's what happens, right? It's not a positive outcome.
yes,
uh,
exactly. And it's any of the players. That's what this is just their role, right? Like the mind tells the body to jump, it jumps, right? But if the body's really tired, it's got to tell the mind, like, hey, I'm tired, I need sleep now, can you go to sleep, right? So they're all important, they're all equally important. It's just a matter of what's their role. Are they playing the right role, and are they working together, as a team, to so that you perform at a high level, and again, get the most out of life. Yeah, so just because it's a hierarchy, it doesn't mean like one is more important than the other. It
right.
just means in terms of who should be guiding. So again, ultimately, I would say the coach is guiding the captain. The captain is guiding the star player, and the star player is guiding the workhorse overall, right? Because that's just the way, in terms of the transfer down of instructions, if you will, or wisdom
Yeah.
in this case, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think the barrier for a lot of people here, and especially with me, was of course the mind getting in the way. I think that's a block for a lot of people. and what you think you should know, and being in control. And part of the practice of getting connected with and listening to your soul is actually requiring you to let go of what you think you know and
Yes.
what you think should be, and having the things that you have and are a certain way, and that can be a big barrier. So for me, uh, learning to let go and learning to surrender and learning to trust,
Hmm.
um, because, and again, not more than, you have to be honest about how much you're capable of letting go into that and surrendering, because like when I was really really stuck in my head,
Hmm.
I wouldn't really give much. I couldn't
Yeah.
really trust much. I just couldn't. It was like, no, I got to be in control, I got to be in charge. This is how I'm directing my life, even though I'm full of anxiety and depression,
Hmm.
and things are falling apart around me, and I'm still trying to keep control. And so part of that, keeping the star player, the mind in check, is learning to surrender and let go of control, and just taking yourself and learning to follow that guidance into small situations at first, and
Hmm.
making small little frequent changes, so you can see and know that where it's guiding you is actually working out. And then when you go through an experience that you wouldn't have normally chosen if you were in control, then when you get to the end of it, you can be like, oh, so that's why, right? It's like the
Hmm.
mind wants to know why beforehand and then plan around that. But
Hmm.
when you're surrendering to your soul, a lot of the times you don't know why. You just know the impulse says do this, and you go do it. And the why doesn't always reveal itself. It doesn't. And for the mind, that's a hard concept to grasp, because the mind is always looking to put meaning on things and to know why, so it can feel safe and it can feel in control and it can feel like it's on top of things and have that sense of certainty. So I think that's just, yeah, for me, in terms of keeping the mind in check, that was probably the biggest thing I had to work around, was just learning to trust that guidance and just doing it in really really small stages at first, until I could trust it a little bit more. Now, I'm not saying I still 100% have thrown myself into that surrender state. Clearly, my mind and my ego are still a work in progress,
Hmm.
uh, but I just have more awareness of it, and when it's taking me down bad roads than it used to. So,
Yes,
yeah,
it's always going to be like anything, right? To stay fit, you got to exercise. So you got to stay on top of it. If you let it go, it can regress, right? Yeah, and I like what you said. I think that's basically the real challenge, right? The battle between the ego and the soul, right? The ego wants to dominate. That's why a lot of people don't want to listen to talks like this, because it is esoteric, and the soul is just something that you can't see or touch or really define, right? Whereas the ego, which is made up of the body and mind, I mean, you could see the body, it's clear, and the mind, I mean, it's like a computer. People know that I can calculate this, I can problem solve, I can do all these things. And so they sort of, again, put them higher up on this hierarchy here, where most people, I would say, are ego driven, and the soul and great spirit are somewhere at the bottom, right? It's completely flipped upside down, right?
yeah,
And again, it's, yeah, shiny ball syndrome, always seeking that shiny ball, and a lot of it is pleasure seeking, right? Things that give pleasure to body and mind, pleasure to the ego, right? The quick superficial pleasures, and that's what really drives them, and that's what becomes darker and darker, right? It's the same message, but it's good to reiterate that and hear it over and over, because you really need to let this sink in and understand it in order to realize what you need to do and make that switch. And I think uh, meditation is definitely, I mean, we're going to talk about that next, but is something to learn how to do, to let go and let God, right? Let go and let yourself tune in to your soul and your connection to divinity. And every time you meditate, that part of yourself gets stronger and stronger. And the control aspect that the mind wants starts to get weaker and weaker. So, but there are other things you could do too. But I like what you said there. And
Yeah.
I think that's not just your struggle. I really do think that's everyone's struggle. Yeah. Yeah. Very common. Um, Step 3, eliminate blockages. So yeah, evolve and elevate to higher vitality levels. So, the I created the V1 to V10 scale for physical, mental, and spiritual self, and for a whole bunch of other things as well. But the key, I think, here to understand is that when you're at low levels of health, whether it be physical, mental, or spiritual, you're going to suffer to a certain degree. You're not going to be at ease. You're going to experience some dis-ease, right? And your goal, I think, for everyone, I mean, is to rise up this scale if they want, to lead a life of true fulfillment and a life of high performance, right? If not, then you're that's fine too. That's your choice. If you don't want to evolve and you're happy with your pain and suffering, some people are in a state of mind where they want to continue being miserable, and that's okay, because sometimes that's where I was for many years. I was learning about this stuff, and I'm like, no, I'm not ready, and I kept putting it off until I was pretty much forced into finally taking a look at this and doing something about it. And yeah, sometimes you just need to hit rock bottom, and and that's it. But this is obviously for people who are looking to evolve. Yeah, if you're inactive, obese, and immobile, it's going to be very hard for you to express your soul, right? Authentic soul expression is going to be difficult. uh, if you can hardly get out of bed and go up and down stairs, right? If let's say one of your I guess things your soul loves to do is, I don't know, climb a mountain. Like you said, somebody actually enjoys climbing a mountain. If they can't even climb up a flight of stairs without being completely, exhausted afterwards, then, it's going to be very tough to express their soul the way it wants to. And then, the mind as well. If the mind is in a very low state of health, it's going to be very difficult for it to um, fulfill or create plans, because it's great at problem solving and creating plans to achieve or attain or live or set up the life that the soul wants, right? So um, again, you're not going to be able to fully utilize your star player. And then, of course, if you're a V1 to V3 uh, in spirituality, where you're completely disconnected, um, you don't even care to think about soul. You don't do anything for anyone. You don't serve anyone else except for yourself. Um, yeah, then what ends up happening is, uh, it could lead to depression, possession, unresolved trauma, and karma that just cause a lot more, again, pain and suffering. So, uh, yeah, these are definitely something that you want to look to evolving in order to eliminate these blockages and start, leading the soul-driven life. Because if you don't, it's going to be extremely challenging to do that.
Yeah.
Would you agree there, Dave?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, so the way I look at it is, when a body is not healthy, let's say you've got Crohn's or chronic digestive issues, or you've got a low thyroid, or your adrenals are burnt out, or whatever. Whenever your body is depleted of its physical resources, your consciousness operates more from the animal mind, the animal brain. we've got the animal brain, we've got the limbic brain, and then we've got the conscious mind. And when you get into that, when the body, and if you're not listening to your body, if your health just keeps going down and down and down over time, but you're not paying attention or listening or not caring, your choices actually become more and more unconscious. And that fear of having your health taken away from you lingers under the surface, and that just magnifies and magnifies. And fear, if there's anything that blocks you from connecting with your soul, it's fear, right? It's if you're in that fight or flight state all the time, either because of your health or because of your mind just being wound up, then that takes you into, again, very reactionary mode, and it just disconnects you from the feelings and the sensations that you need to have to pay attention to. Because as you said before, the connection is built through sort of stillness. At least for me it was, and those hyper emotions that arise from the ego, those explosive emotions. The more you have those explosive emotions, the less still you are, the harder it is to connect.
Yes.
So yeah, for me it was all of them. I had health issues, I had digestive issues, I had heavy metal toxicity. It was taking my energy away. All I could ever think about was, how am I going to get my energy back? How can I even get out of bed to go to work for an hour?
Yes.
You just go into survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, all you think about is how you can survive, and you don't really think about the cost of it, right? So yeah, so just getting out of survival mode.
And then you start taking things to help that, whether it be medication or or alcohol or food. You could turn to junk food or different things to give you that quick, I guess, superficial feeling of feeling good, and that just disconnects you even more.
It does, yeah. And so that's where the mental emotional part comes in, and I think is really important, having the tools and the skills to cope, because we are so quick to medicate, and not even just with drugs, right? With food, with sex, with internet porn, with even for some people, exercise can be a form of medication, self-medication. I mean, exercise is good at helping to release and process, but some people can use that as a crutch, so to speak, to not deal with their stuff.
I did. Yep.
Yeah, some people medicate through work. Like, guys do that if they're not happy in their relationship. They just medicate by burying themselves in their job. So there's all these ways that we do not deal with whatever is uncomfortable. So having the skills and the tools to learn to process and integrate and transmute those emotions, I think is really, really key, because the physical barriers are not there and you're healthy, you can still be blocked by those emotional barriers for sure.
Because it's work, right? It takes energy to get out of a low state of being, right? Whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, or combination, or all three. And that's the last thing you want, right? Like, that is to have to do more work when you're already, low energy and struggling with all these things. So it's definitely a challenge. Like, and nobody wants to look at that, because it's all this darkness, all this garbage that's been piled up under the carpet, so to speak, and they know it's going to require lots of work and lots of cleaning, and the last thing they want is some other huge challenge on their plate, because you're in that state, you're not motivated to even make yourself some dinner or whatever. You're not even motivated to get out of bed. So whatever the case, so like, you imagine having to do all this work to get out of that hole. I mean, it's definitely not an enviable place to be. But that's the time where you need it the most, right? So you have to figure out ways to start small, bite-sized things, and and start to elevate it, right? I really like Jordan Peterson, and he says, just make your bed, right? That's one of his things. And even if you just get up in the morning and make your bed, I mean, you've accomplished something. Start there, right? So I like that kind of um, that kind of like small
Yeah.
daily actions that help to build momentum
Yeah.
into evolving, right? So that's why I never never think, oh my goodness, this is because no one's telling you to do it all in one day. Just do a little bit. You don't have to do it all in one day, right? Because actually that's not even a positive thing to try to do it all in one day,
No. Yeah,
because then
exactly.
you can end up it usually does backfire and make things worse on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to move on?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, I think we're good there.
Okay, the integration of expression. This was something that I conceptualized and put down on paper in my first book, One Habit at a Time, back in 2011, I believe, when I published it. And it's sort of to give people an idea of what we're talking about here today. And as you could see, it all starts with the source, where we come from before we're born. We come from the universal light, and it basically, our soul comes into being and into this, uh, I guess, realm with a body and a mind, which is then, as you can see here, when you have a conscious, which makes up the conscious self or ego, and when it's healthy and it's clean, um, then you're thinking accurately. You're planting the right seeds and creating the life that you want, because your thoughts are resonating with your soul, and you're listening to your soul and its guidance, and so that way the light, the universal light source, is shining through, and it hits the screen of life, which you can see there with the heart, and it's bright and it's working exactly, and it being expressed fully the way you know uh, someone who is soul driven, that's what's going to happen, right? You're just going to create whatever the soul wants, and your life is going to be enlightened. Whereas on the right side, uh, you have wayward thinking, right? Because the ego is muddied, right? It's the one who wants to control. It doesn't want to listen to what the soul has to say, so it literally blocks it out. The soul is no longer the captain of the ship. It tries to become the dominant force, and depending on whatever society has programmed, it's going to try to create those things, and often it's going to be in direct opposition or upstream from what the soul wants, and that's going to create darkness in your life, right? And you could have amazing things, like, just because the left side is bright and the right side is dark, it doesn't mean, oh, the left side, the person on the left side has, their dream home with, Ferraris and whatever it is and all these things. Like, a person could have all those things on the right side, and they could be dark because they're just not leading a life that they want to lead. This has nothing to do with your external world, and that's what I want. This individual could be the same individual, and it was for me. Like, I had, when I was depressed, I was on the right side. When I healed and I started leading from my soul and my heart, I was on the left side, and nothing really changed in my outer world, right? So um, that's what's really really key to understand. It has nothing to do with what's going on the outside. This is all an inner state of being. Yeah. Anything you want to add to this, Dave?
I mean, that's perfect. Yeah, so it's a state of being more important than circumstances. Um, the outside world may eventually change because as your state of being elevates, um, you may be that way for a while, but then when you change, reality around you also does eventually change, but it may not happen right away. But it
No.
is, it's more about how you feel It's more about your state of being more at
Mhm.
peace, being more happy, being more in a state of joy. Um, but you may find when you do elevate your state of being that other people some people may drift away from your life, right? Change
Yes.
happens. Things happen. If you start following that, then whatever is not authentic may at some point start to fall away. Um,
Yeah, and it happens naturally. It's not like
yeah,
you are gonna push them away and say, "Get out of my life." It's just gonna be like, "Whoa," It happened with me. There was people that I used to go out and party with, and after I healed and started to live more on the left side, it just sort of, they're like, "Hey, you want to go?" No, I don't. I'm done with that. Really? Yes. Okay. And I'm like, "Hey, if you ever want to do something positive, like go play sports or whatever, do something like, then give me a call." And you know what? They're not into that, so they're probably not going to call you. So yeah, so you definitely things will start to reshape around you. The outside world will reshape itself around you, that reflects your inner state or your soul. Yeah, absolutely, Dave.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Hmm.
yeah. But it will happen on its own. I mean, you don't have to.
Hmm.
It's nothing you have to force for sure.
No, yeah, it just happens naturally. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. We'll move on to the next one. All right. So how do we create this healthy ego, right? Let's go back here. As you could see here, it was nice and clear here. That's what the healthy ego is. And this is the ego that's, definitely unhealthy. It's muddied. It's blocking the light from passing through your unique soul, which is trying to express itself uh, in this world, right? In this realm. And so so the body and mind are vehicles for authentic soul expression, so make sure they are kept in a vital state. um, so for the soul, strengthen the soul through conscious unity, mindfulness, meditation, prayer, gratitude, fasting, etc. There's different things that you can do. Being of service to other people. There's a lot, right? So whatever you feel most comfortable with, whatever you feel connects you the most to that special place within, do more and more of that. It's exercise, right? And until it becomes just a natural way of life for you. um, so I mean, all of these are amazing. Dave, would anything else you would add to these?
So I mean, strengthening the body, we kind of already talked about, and you've got
Oh
it
yeah.
there. Just movement, nutrition,
Hmm.
flexibility, mobility, rest, all that kind of stuff. The mind, the mindfulness. I would say be very. One of the things I started doing to keep my mind in check was paying attention to judgments. The mind judges so quickly and criticizes so quickly, either self or others. So just being aware of your own judgments, your own expectations,
Hmm.
those types of things, preconceived ideas about not only situations but people, and coming at people with, don't have that judgment in your head about how they are, who you think you are, because that's just a projection of your own mind. And
Hmm.
when you kind of learn to rein in the judgments, I mean, it happens all the time unconsciously. It's just an autopilot thing. And when I learned to stop being so judgy,
Yes.
that really settled my mind down quite a bit.
Yes.
Thoughts of the future or thoughts of the past for the mind, anxiety is brought on a lot by thinking about and catastrophizing events that may happen,
Hmm.
even if it's only an hour from now. But a lot of the times it's not. It's a lot of things that we just think about, and we're constantly told from society that the sky is falling.
Hmm.
And of course, we get anxious. Why wouldn't we if we think the sky is falling all the time? But learning to ground yourself in the present moment, because those future thoughts can really waste a lot of energy in worrying about things that haven't happened yet, or carrying things forward from the past. I think
Hmm.
for mastering the mind, those were the three: the judgments and the the past and the future. Because you get hurt in the past, you keep that with you. If you don't learn to forgive and let it go, you just project that onto all the situations that you see in front of you, and you're just repeating an unconscious loop of a past event.
Yes.
For sure. So the mind, those are some of the things that I struggled with, especially with the anxiety, the self-judgment, the self-criticism, and the criticism of others. And when you stop doing that, your mind frees up a lot. It becomes so much more clear. You perceive and you can see things a lot clearer, and you just make better decisions and choices all around. With the soul, I'm actually going to pull a page out of Taoist philosophy here. And I think maybe the Bible talks about this too, and just in terms of virtues. But there's your emotions, and then there's virtues, which are just ways of behaving that are closer to the soul. And
Yes.
when you're acting from that, you're a lot closer to your soul than not. And so there's 7 or 8 that I have written down. So honesty and integrity, right? Kindness and compassion, self-confidence and courage, for sure.
Yes.
You will have to face challenges in life, no doubt about it. Humility and vulnerability, gratitude and appreciation, forgiveness, so important, and self-love and self-compassion, of course. And so those are all practices, things that I try and do as much as I can when I go into situations. And when you can learn to hold those states of being, that anchors your soul into you even more so. And because those, although they're not emotions, like honesty is not an emotion.
Yes.
But when you are honest, there's no room for guilt in your body.
Yeah.
Right? There's no room for it. You're at an elevated state of being that's a higher vibration. Guilt cannot exist where there's honesty. You were honest. You even if you were wrong, you're still honest about it. You don't have anything to feel guilty about it.
Yes.
And integrity, kindness and compassion. You can't have anger when you are kind. People, and so when you're really confident and you believe in yourself, it's tough for anxiety to get a grip on you. When you're vulnerable, it's hard to have loneliness get a grip on you. Because a lot of people, they're lonely, but they also don't let people in because they don't want to be vulnerable enough to show, those parts of themselves. And that's what I did when I was depressed. I pushed people away because I didn't want them to see me like that. So I wasn't being vulnerable enough. We live in a pretty wealthy society, and we take a lot of what we have for granted. And so that gratitude and appreciation, very, very important for not becoming spoiled with what you have in life. Of course, forgiveness, transmuting pain to love. There's a lot of pain that people carry around, and a lot of suffering that is just not let out and not processed, and that becomes a weight. You learn to forgive as a practice. That elevates your state of being to the point where that pain can't grip and hold you anymore. And then the self-love is very good for overcoming shame, for people that just do not feel worthy or feel like they do not deserve anything more than they are already getting. And so part of, the mindfulness and the emotions, managing the emotions, is learning to express those when they come up and not let them control you. But the other part of that, and this is the part I was missing for the longest time, is adding in the specific practices of being honest, being kind, being compassionate, and all of the rest, because they hold you at such a higher state. Those lower states of being, just they can't touch you anymore. And in Taoist philosophy or religion, when you embody those, you are closer to your soul than at any other time. And when you embody those and anchor those, there are even higher states of being, like devotion, like reverence, like awe and inspiration, that then also become the next level of practice, and that take you even closer to your soul. So there's different practices that you can be. And I mean, it's a state of being that you practice like anything else, right? It's like exercise, it's like memorization. It's just something that you do over and over again, and you take yourself into situations or not necessarily deliberately, but when they come up, you have that self-awareness to know when you're not being honest, or you're out of integrity, or you're guarding and you're not being vulnerable, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, adding those in as a practice, I think, for soul development and staying connected with your soul, because your soul is super, super high vibe. It is so infinitely loving and compassionate.
Yes.
It is for you to elevate yourself to that. And when you do that, that's when the integration happens. But your soul is going to make you earn it. It's not just going to
Mhm.
hand it to you.
Yes.
So you have to do the work, and that's part of doing the work, for me, for developing that connection with the soul, for sure.
Awesome. That's really, really good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for yeah, just yeah, everything you said there was great. I love the virtues. Um, and I think they're all tied in together. A lot of this stuff, right? Like when you say mindfulness, um, it's great for the soul, but that's really the only way you're gonna practice accurate thinking there for the mind, right? Because accurate thinking, for instance, is when you're thinking, uh, again, resonates with your soul, right? So you're listening to your soul, and your soul saying, this is what we want, this is what we want you to figure out how to create, and get to it, but not in a commanding way, but
Right.
and then it's up to you to be mindful to see if whether or not your thoughts are. That's why it's more than positive thinking, because positive thinking, it's like, what is positive thinking? Well, it's only positive. It is, if again, it's got to be unique to you, right? So it's what may be positive for someone may not be positive for you. So it's
Yeah.
more than that. That's why I say accurate thinking. It's in line with what your soul wants, right? And
Yeah. That's
so
very
that's
important.
really, really important, right? It's not just about positive thinking; it's about accurate thinking, and then again, following through with the right action so that it does happen. Um, and again, I think just making that connection of all three, because again, then the workhorse, the body, is part of that action. It's got to whatever. It's got to read to learn. It's got to move to get to the library. Whatever it is, the body's going to help you uh, make that build a house. Whatever it's got to work, right? So just learning how to integrate all three of these, you start to realize when you can get them all working together harmoniously. Your life is going to be just naturally uh, less chaotic. Again, it keeps I'm going back to this accurate thinking, because like you said, you're not going to be as judgmental. You're going to be more honest, because you're going to say, well, whoa, I'm about to lie here. Is that an accurate thought, which is going to lead to an accurate action, right?
Right.
And you can be like, well, no. Or you see someone and you're like, oh, that's just another right wing person or whatever politically, or you're
Exactly.
already prejudging someone.
Yeah.
Uh, so again, is that an accurate thought? No, it's not. Okay, my soul doesn't see that. My soul sees beyond that. I see my fellow brother, my fellow sister. That yeah, I know they have some programming that I don't agree with, but I'm not going to just judge them on the programming. There are a lot more than that. There's something way more meaningful than their programming behind them, right? Because that's
Right.
what you're trying to do. You're trying to not only dissolve your own unhealthy ego, right, and try to clean it and look past it, but you're part of that process is doing the same thing with others. So I really do agree with that, like not being judgmental. And so you don't just look at them and so for me, I say, okay, yeah, they're a bit muddied, but that doesn't mean that there's no value there to the person. If I could help them clean up, then
Right.
I'm going to help them, right? Because that's you know a part of me, right? We're only as strong as the weakest link, right? Together, humanity, right? So we got to look at helping each other out. The moment we judge and there's, oh, that person's worthless, like then no, we're definitely being ego driven there. So I agree with you, and we're not thinking accurately. Yeah. So, anyways, this is definitely holistic as you can see,
Yeah.
where they're all working synchronistically together. And it is an exercise. It is something that you need to learn over time. It's not going to happen in one day. But if you do learn how to put all these pieces together, you're definitely going to, get a lot more out of your life and enjoy it a lot more. So let's go to the next thing. That's it. So yeah, final thoughts. Dave, we got to the end here, and
To the end.
we both came up with a quote we want to leave everyone with to, I guess, think about. And yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, you start with yours.
Yeah, so from interconnection arises interconnection. And
Wow.
so I think this sort of encapsulates a lot of my process and journey over the last number of years, because I definitely, all of my attention was focused outward. It was focused on the external world, and I had very poor self-awareness. And I was just chasing one instant gratification after the next. And there was nothing. And because of that, I wasn't really connected with myself. I was connected with who I thought I should be, or who others thought I should be, or trying to live up to that standard. But I just really didn't have that connection with myself. And through stillness, mostly meditation, um, and building the awareness of the inner world, my journey started to go, and still does, take me deeper and deeper within myself. And so if we think of the iceberg, where the tip of the iceberg is only 10% and the 90% is underneath the water that you don't see, I kind of like that analogy for our mind. And so much of our mind is that directs our behavior. I was not even aware of. I was not aware of certain patterns of behavior and things that my parents did that I just naturally adopted and continued on blindly without questioning them, or things, all that kind of stuff. So the more and more I went within to myself, the more and more I built a connection with that soul and with myself. And the more I was able to have that connection and filter through a lot of the fear and the negative emotions and all that stuff, the more whole I became, the more I was able to connect with other people.
Yes.
And, when you deal with that kind of stuff and you face it and you integrate it, you then see how other people are acting from the same places. And instead of being judgmental or pushing them away, you get to extend the arm of compassion and see that this person isn't, they're either in pain, they're acting out of pain, they're acting out of suffering, or they're just unconscious. Like, they just don't know any better.
Yes.
No one's ever taught them any better, or they just don't have the awareness. And so you connect with when you build that internal connection, you can then connect with other people at a deeper level. And that means a lot, right? There's
because you first did it with yourself, and now you know how to. Because once you get to that point, then you realize, oh, this part of me is in everyone, and it's special, and it's beautiful, and it's amazing. If only, others can, do what I did and go through this, programming, go through this part that's muddying our ability to see, connect, and feel and hear this part, then yeah, we'll definitely have a strong relationship, right? The stronger the relationship you have with yourself, then the stronger the relationship you can or potential to have with others. Yeah, I can totally see that, because it's been my experience as well.
Yeah. And so I'm going to take it one step further, even, is that when you go even deeper within yourself, you start to develop this level of subtle awareness and connection that I definitely not had. And it's not only a connection with other people, it's a connection with life. It's all of life all around you. And obviously I feel that most when I'm in nature.
Yes.
But it's just the interconnectedness of all things, and it actually changes your perception about how you see life as a whole. You don't see yourself as separate from life. You see
No.
yourself as an integral part of life and a piece of the puzzle, and the puzzle would not be complete without your piece.
Yes.
Um, but you get to see, uh, you get a stronger sense of interconnectedness that keeps you in the flow with life. But you have moments where you feel yourself as more than just you. And then we can maybe talk about this at another time. But I mean, I started experiencing myself beyond my body.
Yes. Yeah, we
Many,
could do a whole talk on that because I think we would have to build it up the right way because
yeah,
a lot of people's minds will reject that,
yeah,
and yeah, so if we build it up the right way, I think it'll be better so that we don't scare anyone off, I guess, if they're not ready. But yeah, no, that's yeah, definitely what would happen because the ego is all about identity and separation, and the soul is the opposite. It's about connection and unity. So you're definitely they have opposite perspectives for sure.
yeah. And so I mean, where what I constantly work on now is just like when COVID first came up
Hmm.
and work was shut down, like I was lost, and I
Yeah.
could feel my mind and notice my mind saying, "Okay, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? How are you gonna make money? Now you have to do this and that." And I
Yeah.
could see all not only the worry, but I could see, as we talked about earlier, the identity trying to
Yeah.
hold on to itself,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I could have very easily just gone out and still been trainer Dave and gotten clients and worked for the money, but I actually decided to wait and process. And now I had other things going on in my life too. But
Hmm.
through that process of realizing that the identity was just holding on to itself, it allowed me to start doing the writing, something I never would have done before.
Yes.
And building that. And for me, that creative outlet was another bridge or connection to my soul that I had yet to explore.
Hmm.
So there's another interconnection that I wanted to bridge, and it's leading us to doing videos like this, right? So a
Hmm.
path that I never would have taken had I held on to the identity and not had the self awareness that was trying to reinforce itself by getting me to do things that were within my comfort zone. uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's just a constant. For me, it's just a constant growth, but also a surrender and trust, and that's what I keep trying to reinforce in my own journey. Is just more surrender, more trust, learning to let go of the ego, learning to let go of the identity,
Hmm.
and just surrender into where that's going to take me. So yeah, but for me, it all started. The pivot was going within in the inner journey and
Hmm.
building that connection. So if there's anybody who's watching this and that's where to start. At least that's what I would say is where to start is just start going within, build the
Yeah.
stillness,
Step one, build awareness, like we said.
build
Right?
self-awareness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-awareness through stillness.
Hmm.
And it'll grow and evolve from there.
Yeah. And little steps, little things at a time, little activities at a time. No, don't think you got to do, uh, so much all at once. Just start with something simple and build from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Okay. So nothing compares to soul, wealth, and power. Sal
Yes.
Crispo.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the problem is how do you know what is better when you haven't experienced it? So you don't know what you're missing until you've experienced it. And this is what the I guess the difficulty or where the difficulty lies because I was living in hell for the first 25 years of my life, and once I healed I went from hell to heaven like we saw in that chart. That's why I was able to like conceptualize that so easily in my mind again because it was like, okay, yeah, this is where I was really dark, and now I'm enlightened in where I can appreciate my life so much more. And when I was in the darkness, I didn't know about the light, right? I knew something was missing. I was trying to find that through external means, right? Chasing the shiny ball syndrome. I was, again, I used this in our podcast before, indulging in the negatives and chasing the positives, where I would go after a goal because I thought that's, what was going to lead to fulfillment. Or if I was dealing with a lot of inner pain and I just wanted to numb it, I would indulge in negatives, and I knew that would never lead to anywhere good. But I needed it because, again, I was in survival mode, and uh, yeah, you think like that's where true wealth and power are, is in this world outside you. That's what society's marketing to us every day. Like we're constantly being bombarded by savvy marketers saying, you need to have this uh, product or lifestyle or whatever it is, and you keep just going in circles trying to build this life based on those things, because that's the promise that you're going to have wealth, power, happiness, whatever it is. You can just fill in the blank, but really you're never going to get that. The only place I truly found wealth, power, joy, peace, love, all those things in an intensity that dwarfs, I mean, it's not even comparable to what you get from the ego, and the superficiality of the ego is again, there's just no comparison, right? And that's where this quote comes from. So it is so difficult. I think even people who did go through this spiritual awakening, there are many stories of it, and they've tried to explain it too. And I think people would take it literally, right? Like that, they're trying to explain this different consciousness, right? So, they're looking here below this level, and then they pop up above and everything's so different, and they're trying to explain it, but people could only see that lower level of consciousness, and they're trying to figure out what they're saying with that perspective. It's just it's extremely difficult, and yeah, so I could only share my experience saying, listen, I was ego driven. I know the the wealth and power, whatever you want to call it, joy, love that comes from that type of living, and I also know the one that comes from leading a soul-driven life, and the two are vastly different. There's just, again, no comparison, and I hope, my wish for you is that you do look into it and become soul driven, because the more people become soul driven, the more of a heavenly state this reality will become. You'll have more and more people living from their soul. They'll be creating things that they love. They'll be and looking to create great relationships. They won't be looking to steal from one another, manipulate one another, sell products that other people don't need, that are harmful to them, just so that they can gain material wealth. And yeah, so that's really my wish for everyone, is that they become more soul driven and create more of a heavenly life for the people around us, not just today, but obviously in the future generations.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Heaven is not necessarily something you have to wait till you die to experience, right? You can experience it right here, right now.
Yes. Yeah, that's yeah, it's basically yeah, that's it, right? Yeah, you definitely can experience it now, and that's what a lot of these spiritual gurus, sages, call them what you will, just people who became enlightened, and reached this higher perspective and unity, that they achieved conscious unity. They were trying to share and tell others. It's like, hey, it's worth it, right? It's just like people say, oh, this whole spiritual stuff, but think of it from a physical standpoint, right? Like if you have someone who is a V1 to V3 and they're bedridden, right? How much of the world are they going to see? How much are they going to enjoy their physical body? How much of the joys are they going to experience? Are they going to experience the joys of riding a bike, the joys of swimming, the joys of, you know what I'm saying, versus the joys of rolling over in bed.
Right.
I mean, that's really like, I don't know, an analogy that I could use, but it really is that. I mean, there's no real, the joys of, if you enjoy this kind of stuff, jumping out of a plane or whatever, like it's just extreme exhilaration and true joy or again, true wealth, power, whatever, versus just living this complete sedentary lifestyle physically. Same thing with spirituality, right? Same thing with the mind, right?
Yeah.
You can have examples of the mind where you can't even do a simple mathematical equation versus someone like an Einstein where they could just do a super complex equation and come up with amazing answers. I mean, it's just this complete opposite. I guess I don't know what you even call it. Just a complete opposite end of the spectrum, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Awesome, Dave. I really enjoyed doing this with you.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Yeah, I hope this reaches a lot of people and it can, help enrich their lives and the planet.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for having the chat today.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone sees this and they want to contact Sal Crispo,
Mm-hmm.
Sal V10Health.com. And my email is davehurdle@rogers.com, but my website is awakeningenergy.net. And your website
is www.v10health.com.
All right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Okay, Sal. So until next time.
Yes. Can't wait.
We will figure out what to talk about, and I'm sure it will be awesome.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome, Dave. Yeah, we'll definitely do this again, and we'll probably be giving this talk again too. I think this was the first time we did this one, and I think we should do it again. And look forward to it.